More bad news in the software world. This has really been a bad month for software. I just turned on my computer today and I get this message at the top. It says, to get future Google Chrome updates, you'll need Windows 10 or later. This computer is using Windows 7 and it will continue to use Windows 7. It's not as bad as the Spotify thing in some ways, and it's worse than the Spotify thing in others. It's not as bad in the sense that it immediately doesn't really mean anything, because the browser will continue to work even though it's not supported. There is a seemingly large collection of people that flip out and get hysterical over using unsupported software, and it's really just because they don't understand the computer. Unsupported and doesn't work are totally different things, and they're not synonymous. They don't necessarily even follow each other. There's plenty of software I use regularly that is 5, 10, 15, 20 years old, and it still works just fine even though it hasn't been supported for years or decades. And then on the other hand, there's tons of software out there right now that's supported and doesn't even work. So it's inconsequential in that respect. What is concerning is just how long will it be before it starts having problems. Now, I have no attachment to Google's Chrome. In fact, when I first started using the computer, I was a FireFox user. And then when I started to get into YouTube more, and there was some other thing. I think it was like Firefox had a very high memory usage. And at the time, I don't know if this is still true to this day, but at the time, it seemed like Google's Chrome was a bit lighter on the memory and on the chip. And so since I was accessing, for an overwhelming portion of the time that I'm using the browser, I'm accessing YouTube, which is a Google product. It just kind of made sense to use Google's browser to access Google's product. Does it really make any difference? Probably not. Would I switch to another browser and have no problem? Absolutely. There's a convenience factor to the Google's Chrome because it has the excuse me, it has the bookmarks there when I sign in. But I mean, I probably go to less than 10 websites on a regular basis, so it's not really a hassle to just import the bookmarks. And not to mention, I rarely even use the bookmarks because most of the time you just type the first couple of words of the address and it populates it, and you just strike the enter key and you're there. So what do? Mozilla Firefox, to my knowledge, still supports Windows 7. There has not been a release date that I could find which states when the support will end. So I partially feel inclined to switch to Mozilla Firefox just because I want to support the organization that makes the product that works the way I want it to work. But I don't necessarily think that we need to call for a ban of Google's Chrome either, because the reality is they supported it well beyond its EOL. You know, Windows 7 went out in 2020, I think it was. I don't even remember. Yeah, I think it was January 2020. So it's been almost a whole 2 years since it hit EOL, and they're only dropping support now, so that's not bad. It doesn't compare to Spotify's 8 years on XP, but for a gigantic monopolistic company to support software 2 years past its expiration, I think is pretty reasonable. In fact, they extended the date at least once. It was set to expire sometime in 2021, and they extended it due to high usage. So I guess to a degree I commend them for their extended support, but now inevitably it has come to an end. I don't think it's really much of a concern because I think it'll be several years before before it starts having compatibility issues on the browser. And when the time comes where it is starting to have problems, then you switch to FireFox, which presumably, unless they stop support next month as well, will last longer. And then if that fails, I'm sure a project will emerge, like we have MyPal for Windows XP. I'm sure something will emerge for Windows 7 that keeps it useful. I think that Windows 7 will remain useful on the internet for at least a decade or more, because if you look at Windows XP with the MyPal browser, the main limitation is simply processing power and memory. You know, today's bloated, poorly programmed websites only work so well on 512 megabytes of RAM with a single core chip, which is usually what a Windows XP machine is going to be. You know, sometimes more memory, but that's about it. In Windows 7 you have 64-bit written for quad-core chips, dual-core chips, things that have much more processing capacity and memory capacity. So I suspect that Windows 7 will be going for a long time. And how long the individual programs will last, that I don't know. I hope that Spotify continues to support Windows 7 on the same trend that they did on Windows XP. I hope that Discord keeps operating correctly. And I hope that Thunderbird keeps operating correctly, because those are the three programs that I use the most. And the AOL. I hope that the AOL keeps operating as well. Because since you can no longer generate apps passwords to use Outlook, I've been using Thunderbird more often, which is fine. I prefer Outlook because it has the calendars and the phone numbers in it, but whatever. So that's that. Another scary message. Well, actually, I shouldn't say it's a scary message. It's a disappointing message. But actually, for what it's worth, it's worded very well. It's it doesn't scare the user. It's not. It doesn't even have a call to action. It just states the information, and that's it. And that's what it should do. And that allows the user to make a decision on how they want to proceed. For me, I'm going to keep using it until the day comes that I can't, because I really enjoy using Windows 7. Windows 7 was a huge part of the earlier days when I was learning computers, because I saw the Windows 7 transition, and I implemented a lot of Windows 7 units back in the day. So I have a lot of nostalgia in Windows 7. I feel like I used Windows XP for as long as absolutely possible, up until the very end. Prime example being the machine over there, which is still in service and will be in service until the absolute last second that it stops working, which I forget what the date is, but it's in the next couple of weeks. And so I want to make sure I do the same thing with Windows 7. I want to use it exclusively for as long as I can, so that when the day comes, I feel like I didn't miss out on it. So I'll keep using it, and I suspect it'll be a couple of years before we really have any kind of a problem.